everyone, and welcome to Chemistry and Society here on Focus on Liberia. On Focus on Liberia, we educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. And I'm your presenter, Dr. Saki Golafale. And this evening, we're going to be discussing something very, very important that is of concern to our communities, our societies around. So we're going to be discussing carbon monoxide poisoning. As you know, or you've heard about carbon monoxide poisoning, and it's one of the silent killers around that a lot of people may not know the danger it poses. So tonight we have, I'll be here discussing the science component of it, what role chemistry plays, and we have Mr. Joe Snell, who will be telling us his personal experience based on people who have been affected from his family side. And Mr. Dennis Jai is also here. We'll be having a discussion around this. Mr. Anthony C is also, we'll be having a discussion on this. So I want to welcome all of you who follow Focus on Liberia and Chemistry and Society to this very important discussion. And Mr. Jai, it's up to you.
Thank you. I want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is another edition of Chemistry and Society. And you have your host here, Dr. Saki Golafale. We're glad to have Mr. Joe Snell with us. Carbon monoxide poisoning, we have heard horrible, horrible stories about this. And of recent, 8 persons, 8 family members perished as a result of this very, very tragic carbon monoxide poisoning. And we have, you see there, she graduated from the University of Liberia. And during the party, her mom, her daughter, and other family members all died. So this is a very, very serious issue. And this is not the first time we heard this. Constantly, we have these deaths occurring in Liberia as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. In fact, the autopsy report from the government of Liberia revealed that 2 persons died on Broad Street from carbon monoxide poisoning. Don't ask me about, the science or even the politics of it. All we want to do tonight is to be able to discuss the science, the chemistry involved in this carbon monoxide poisoning. And our friend Joe Snell has a personal experience of this tragedy. We also have Focus on Liberia political bulldog, Mr. Anthony C, who tries to bring politics in everything. Tonight, we're going to hold him down so we talk chemistry. Joe, welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is your first time.
Yes, this is my first time indeed, and I'm very, very, very happy to appear on this forum to speak to my Liberian people about the carbon monoxide crisis in Liberia. This issue is very concerning, and I felt obligated as a Liberian to make my contribution. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Let me send it over to Mr. Anthony C before our host come in. Mr. C.
Dennis, thank you. Fellow Liberians listening, thank you. Quite too often, we hear stories of Liberians dying from carbon monoxide poisoning in Monrovia. This is serious. It has happened so many times. Loved ones, fellow Liberians have been taken away in a relatively short time when we least expected because of this situation. What is causing this? How can we prevent this? And that is why we have Dr. Saki Golafale here, a young Liberian scientist, to help us understand the science surrounding this situation. What are some preventive measures that we are committed people should be applying, that we're not applying, for which this tragedy is taking so many of us away? As Dennis said earlier, Joe Snell is here. He's being impacted in so many ways. People that he is close to fell victim to this particular tragic incident 3 different times, and he's going to share those stories with us. Welcome, hit the share button, folks. This is important. I know Dennis said I shouldn't bring politics in this, and I will not. But if this were a political show, Liberians will be here. But we claim we love each other. Our friends have died from something very preventable. Let's participate in the conversation and see how we can stop these things from happening. That said, let me turn it over to the host of the show, Chemistry and Society. I want to be a chemist. Maybe not.
Yeah, being a chemist is an easy thing, and everyone is a chemist by nature. So the fact that you can boil some egg and mix, some mayonnaise and butter, the spice in the kitchen, you're a chemist.
Okay.
Yeah. Who here doesn't know how to cook? So everybody's a chemist by nature. But the impact of chemistry, as this show is actually intended to connect people to the science that impact their life every day. And a typical example is the issue of carbon monoxide poisoning. And we've heard a lot about carbon monoxide poisoning in Liberia. It's not strange to Liberia. It happens everywhere around the world. So let's get this straight. But what we need to understand is what is carbon monoxide poisoning, and how can we prevent it, and what are the best practices we can put in place to prevent it. So that's what we're going to be talking here today. And let's talk about the science briefly. It's important to understand the basic science, before you talk about prevention, especially for those in authority. They need to know. But for the layman needs to understand, that indeed this thing is poisonous, and the source of carbon monoxide. We'll talk about it. So the big question is, what is carbon monoxide poisoning? And one will first want to know what is a poison, and everyone should understand that once you talk about poison, it's any kind of mixture or chemical that contains, a mixture that contains chemicals that can impact the normal function of an organism. Or in a case that a poison enters the body, it can alter the body's chemistry and have impact on various organs. So it may lead to death depending on the severity. So carbon monoxide is a poison when it enters your body, whether it's a human or animal, because it has a specific target that is going to, and that target is basically your blood. So we'll be talking, and what I want to make clear here is I hope that I can explain the science as the simplest way as I can, and because we have a diverse audience, that's why. So carbon monoxide is a colorless gas. You cannot taste it, you cannot smell it, you cannot see it. So that's why it's usually called the silent killer, because you can sit down where you are and you won't know that you are inhaling carbon monoxide until you become unconscious, and cannot respond. So it's a chemical compound that is composed of carbon. Carbon is on the periodic table, and it also has oxygen. So as the name implies, carbon monoxide. One carbon or one oxygen. All right, my little man wants to listen to this conversation, so
Yeah, that's
I
very
have him
important.
here. He's the next scientist coming up.
Come on,
So
Lance.
one
Let's go.
carbon and one oxygen make carbon monoxide. So that's the whole chemistry of carbon monoxide. The structure, you want to know about the structure, is a simple structure that just a moment. It's a simple structure, it's a linear. So here's an example of a carbon monoxide compound as I'm holding it with this model. So it has a carbon, the black one, it has oxygen. It's a triple bond. When you do basic chemistry in high school, you will know what a triple bond is. So this compound is what it is. And what happened is that carbon monoxide is unsymmetrical. That is, when you turn it the other way around, It's not the same. The atoms on the side, the oxygen and the carbon will swap. So unlike oxygen, oxygen is symmetrical. When you turn it around 180 degrees, it's the same on both sides. So these two compounds have different symmetry, and that's one of the striking structural difference between them. When they're in competition, especially when they enter the body, we're going to talk about that chemistry more. But basically, that's what carbon monoxide is, you know. So, Mr. Jai, you listening to me? I'm talking about carbon monoxide, and what's your impression? What have you learned so much about carbon monoxide?
Right. And the one I wanted to ask you, you said, when you turn it around, it's different. Does it mean that if you flip carbon monoxide around, it changes, it's no longer carbon monoxide, it's something else?
No, it's the same, but what I mean is that it doesn't have a symmetry. It's asymmetrical. So that if you put a mirror here, if you put a mirror between here, it reflects, the reflection will be different compared to when you put a mirror between these two oxygens. It gives you the same on both sides. That's the issue. That's why I'm talking about symmetry. The oxygen O2 is symmetrical. The carbon monoxide is asymmetrical.
Why is that important?
That is important because there's a structural difference, and also it's important in explaining the chemistry of how carbon monoxide binds to a very important a very important part of our blood that is called a hemoglobin. But I wouldn't want to go into the deeper chemistry of these compounds, because it's going to lead me to talking about molecular orbiter and how their orbital differential, why they're symmetrical or not. So I don't want to go into that. For the layman listening to me, they are structurally different. That's what I just explained. And one contains carbon and the other, and oxygen contains only oxygen as elemental oxygen. And another thing about carbon monoxide is lighter. That is, the density is lighter than oxygen. So in a room filled with carbon monoxide close, you will find the lighter one will be on the top and the heavier one will be on the bottom.
Dr. Golafale.
Yeah.
Earlier you said that carbon monoxide is colorless.
Yeah.
My understanding there is, okay, it doesn't have color. And my other understanding is that, okay, you can see it. Now, my, electric understanding of that is, okay, smoke does not have color. After I can see smoke with my eyes. So my question now is, when we say carbon monoxide, isn't that smoke?
Oh, that's a great question. And people listening, let's talk about it. Smoke is a combination of different things. It's important that you ask that question. Smoke is a combination of water vapor. Depending on the nature of the smoke, it contains water vapor, it contains carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is different from carbon monoxide.
Okay.
Right? Carbon dioxide has two oxygens. Carbon monoxide has one oxygen, and both of them are different, but carbon monoxide is poisonous. So the issue about smoke is smoke contains water vapor or aerosols, different gases, and depends on the nature of it. So it also contains carbon monoxide. But the component of that smoke can be determined by analysis to tell you how much quantity of carbon monoxide is. But just by seeing smoke, it doesn't mean smoke is carbon monoxide. Now, when you ask a question about smoke, it brings me down to the issue of combustion. Combustion is basically burning. When you burn anything containing carbon, it's supposed to produce, the product for that burning is water vapor and carbon dioxide. That is a carbon with 2 oxygen. That is non-poisonous. What becomes poisonous is when there's incomplete combustion.
Mhm.
So carbon monoxide is a result of incomplete combustion, especially the carbon monoxide poisoning that goes on from burning, from car exhaust, from house burning, and people stay in there and die.
Right.
It comes from incomplete combustion. And one of the very simple way to know about incomplete combustion is people who burn coal. You see the coal burning, it's a complete practical incomplete combustion going on. When you cover the coal with some leaf and put dirt on it, you don't want the wood to burn to ashes. You don't
Okay,
want to
Dr. Golafale, please don't go too much into the science here.
Yeah.
I want we the ordinary people to understand this. So now what I'm getting from you is that what we know to be smoke in Liberia is different from carbon monoxide, which is a poisonous gas. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
But carbon monoxide is a component of smoke.
It's part of smoke.
It depends on the nature of the burning. If the burning is a complete combustion, it produces less amount of carbon monoxide in the smoke.
Okay.
If the burning is an incomplete combustion, it produces more carbon monoxide than carbon dioxide. And talking about that is why we'll talk about the vehicle, the car, and the possibility of someone being poisoned with carbon monoxide, or what are the legal issues that have been put in place to prevent those things.
So Dr. Before when a car is on and we see that smoke coming out of the exhaust, what is that? That's all alone. That's what we think is carbon monoxide. Is it not?
It contains carbon monoxide. Now, prior to the, I think 1960 or 1970, cars that been produced after the 1960s or 70s, modern cars now have what we call catalytic converters. Now, you know that every year in the US, before you go do your car registration, you do emission tests, right?
Right.
Yes.
The emission test is meant to check the level of pollutants that are coming from your car. That includes carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and other gases. So in the modern cars right now emit around 0.25% of carbon monoxide. Prior to the invention of catalytic converters that are in the exhaust area, cars were producing 20%, of carbon monoxide. But right now, with the modern technology in the car industry, the automobile industry, it's unlikely that a car exhaust is going to kill you except you're in an enclosed area or you connect the car exhaust pipe into the passenger end and close the windows. It's unlikely that you just sit in an open air for a car exhaust. The amount of carbon monoxide there is not enough to kill anyone. I will tell you a story about Javier Garcia, a story from 2002, Los Angeles family, where the family stayed in the father lit a gas, what was it? I think it was a gas stove or how you call it, a grill in the middle of the house, and he went to sleep. It was a suicide thing. He wanted to kill all his children and himself in revenge for his wife who had left him. So, but in the morning, 5 of the children died. I think some of them went to hospital and didn't survive. He and one of the daughters survived because imagine all night something is burning in the house. Other people get unconscious and die. Only 2 persons survived after they were rushed to hospital. The reason I was giving is that the amount of carbon monoxide was less than 0.05%. 0.005% that they were inhaling. Those two people survived. So, there are a lot of, questions about when someone says someone died from carbon monoxide. There are a lot of questions I would like to ask. How they determine that in terms of when it comes to the science and all that.
All right, Dr. Saki Golafale, there he is the host of this program we called Chemistry and Society here at Focus on Liberia. But this edition is different in that we are trying to talk about the chemistry of carbon monoxide poisoning. So the poisoning itself that is killing Liberians in Liberia, predominantly from generator smoke. A classical example is the most recent one that led to the death of 8 persons from a single family after a graduation ceremony that was held at their residence. Our colleague here, Jocelyn, is being impacted not only by this story, by 2 previous stories that happened, thereby bringing us to the human side of this thing. Joe, again, we can welcome you. You read about the incident that led to the death of those 8 family members, and there were 2 prior ones. And now this one is like a nail in the coffin for you psychologically. So we want you to share with us the 3 stories that you briefed us about. How come this is something that has touched you so much? Why are your questions? What are you wondering about? What is your concern? Share with us these stories.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. C.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy again, like I said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
to be on this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I am driven to come out for this discussion because I have been greatly impacted by the loss of lives that are close to me, very, very close to me. And so when the graduate incidents occurred, I was completely devastated. And then I gave you a call that I want us to discuss this, and we are doing this. And one of the things I wanted to see happening out of this such discussion is to provide education for our Liberian population. Not only to provide education, but to provide counsel so that people will be able to know what has happened. Before I tell you how much I was impacted, let me make this point. Somebody said when the show started that as soon as should not bring in politics into this. And what I want to say is, it is very difficult for me to say what I want to say without having a political flavor. Because we have to hold people accountable, leadership in Liberia accountable for this incident. So if we have to hold leadership accountable for this, then there is no way my comments will be void of political flavor. I just wanted to make that point. Now, here is my point. This discussions for me serve as education for the Liberian people. I want those who are listening to learn from this discussion things that they didn't know about carbon monoxide before. For example, I will buttress the chemistry aspect with this before I tell you about how much I'm impacted. This personal gas goes into your brain unconsciously. And then when you take it in, it displaces the oxygen that in your brain. And once the oxygen in your brain is displaced, it takes no time. You will be dead. That's how much personal this gas is. It displaces the oxygen that enables you to breathe. This gas blocks it and say you are not able to breathe. If you are not able to breathe, you are dead. That's what happens to the people. Now, 2 people close to me fell victims of carbon monoxide in Liberia. I am still grieving as I talk to you at this time. So This is a graduate. We are not related, but a graduate from the University of Liberia. I am a product of the, I am an alumna of the University of Liberia. I know how long it takes to get out of the walls of the University of Liberia, because one semester takes sometimes a year or two, one semester. I am telling you what I know of as a former student of the university. So I am imagining how long it took this girl to have a bachelor degree, only to die on the day of graduation, the day after graduation. It's very sad. It's very embarrassing. It's very frustrating. One writer says, and I quote, "The worst evil in life is when good people sit and do nothing, when evil is prevailing." So we as Liberians cannot sit when we have an agent of death, which is the carbon monoxide person in Liberia. We cannot continue to sit. We need to come out to provide the necessary education, to provide the necessary information, to provide the necessary mechanism that will make people to know what to do, that will avoid our people dying. And this is why I came out today. And so, here is the point. Before this girl and her mother and daughter could die this tragic death, two Liberian couples from the state of Minnesota went to Liberia in 2016, December. Shirley Gross and Lauren Gross. They were members of my SDA church, Seventh-day Adventist Church in Minnesota. We go to the same church. So we were together a day prior to their departure from Minnesota. We went to have a main meeting in Lauren's house. After that, they left and went to Liberia, only to find out that they were found dead in their house with carbon monoxide poisoning. The entire church was devastated. We can't still get this incident out of our memory, because Lawrence and Shelley were our church members. After this, I had a schoolmate who was also a relative of mine, a close relative of mine, Mr. Nathaniel Jebo. May his soul rest in peace. He was living in Ghannasville. His family, including his wife, his children, himself, all of them were found dead in the house out of carbon monoxide poisoning. Yeah, the list goes on and on and on. If I said I will continue to name all the victims, we might not even discuss other things. So here is the point. The Civil War that led to the destruction of the sources of power, electricity power, was done or concluded since 2003. Today, as we speak, we are almost 2 decades, almost 2 decades since the Civil War ended. And there is no electricity in Liberia. Because of the dire need of electricity. That's why the people of Liberia resorted into the use of generator in their private homes. So how can we discuss this topic to avoid politics?
Okay.
This topic involves our political leaders. For example, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was in power for 12 years. She was popularly elected. She served the country for 12 consecutive years. In 12 consecutive years, Monrovia, I don't say the whole of Liberia, Monrovia was in darkness. She just engaged in politics and think electricity was not important. Electricity is life. So how can we have a president that ruled the country for 12 years without electricity? It's hard. We can't let them go like that. That's the source of the earth of the Liberian people. In the absence of electricity, they resorted into using generators. Now, Ellie Johnson had the capability and the resources to electrify the entire country, but she chose not to do that. But she witnessed people dying in numbers by carbon monoxide poisoning. That is very frustrating.
Very frustrating indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And we're very, very sorry for these losses. As you even recount them, it brings back memories of this kind of tragedy that continues to happen. And we'll have time to discuss more. Let's go back to Dr. Golafale to discuss what is carbon monoxide poisoning. And on top of that, how does one get poisoned by carbon monoxide while in a car or in a house? Let's talk about those two briefly.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Mr. Ja. It was quite emotional listening to Mr. Snare narrate, his story of people that have been impacted. And I felt touched, and this thing, we have to educate, our people. Of course, we cannot discuss it without the politics, but public education is necessary, to avoid these things. And one of the things that needs to be addressed is, how people use these generators around, and what are the public, policies that are in place to evaluate what type of generators are imported and to the country. Some of the things that I will come to the question. Some of the things we have to look at is the generators that are used. Do they have catalytic converters on them to avoid to reduce the number of the amount of carbon monoxide? And people should avoid using their generators indoor because the warning is on it. When you look on the generator, avoid indoor use. Of course, even if you have catalytic converter on it that can reduce the amount of carbon monoxide, if you use it indoor, there will be a buildup of it, depending on how long you use it. So we have to educate our people, and it has to be a public education that goes out there continuously. And now to address the question, what was it?
What is CO poisoning?
Now I'm gonna address it from the chemistry perspective. In my hand here is a structure. It's a representation of some kind of structure. So the body is a chemical reservoir, and anything that enters the body can alter the body chemistry, and that can eventually impact body organs, whether positively or negatively. So the body try to resist anything that's going to take it from its normal state, Now, the heart is one of the most important organs in the body. It's the engine of blood supply. So blood goes to the heart. That it comes from all parts of the body. The blood that goes to the heart, it contains it's called a deoxygenated blood. That is no oxygen in it. Very little amount of oxygen, but it contains a lot of carbon dioxide. When you hear that we breathe in oxygen and we give out carbon dioxide, everything behind that whole process of breathing in and giving out is a big science. So I will try to explain it very simple. The heart beats in a way that it receives blood. The blood that comes from all parts of the body to the heart, it needs oxygen. So we call it's a deoxygenated blood. And then it goes to the lungs. It passes through the heart and goes to the lungs. Why it goes to the lungs for? Is to collect oxygen. The oxygen that is deposited there when you breathe in, the oxygen is deposited somewhere. in the lung. The blood going to go there. That is the blood that does not have oxygen is going to go there, collect the oxygen and give out. It will be an exchange process. It will give out carbon dioxide. That's why you will breathe out carbon dioxide and you inhale oxygen. When you inhale that oxygen, it goes in the lung, the blood collects it and takes it to the heart. And then the heart distributes it to the rest of the body. Then it goes to the body again. It collects waste in the form of carbon dioxide. It's a continuous process. As the heart beats, all the body organs, the brain, the kidney, everywhere, the liver, they depend on oxygen to survive. So you need that oxygen to continuously move this whole vehicle, the chemical body. Now, carbon monoxide comes into play if you are in an environment that is polluted with carbon monoxide. You're going to inhale it, and carbon monoxide is very competitive when it comes in. When it gets in your body, it competes with oxygen. What the competition comes in is there are big molecule that are in the body, in the blood, called hemoglobin. It's a transport protein. When I say transport, it means it's just like a taxi that go pick some people up and carry them to the destination they're supposed to be. So the hemoglobin is a transport protein. It comes for oxygen. It's in the blood. It comes for oxygen in the lungs and collect it and go and deliver it to the body tissue. But then when you breathe in carbon monoxide in the lungs, carbon monoxide is very, very strong enough to bind to that hemoglobin. Now, let's take, for example, this is not the actual compound hemoglobin, but if anyone can see, one part of the hemoglobin is called a heme. It got an element called iron. Iron is there. You know, now sometimes people go to the hospital to get a ferrous, right? To take, yeah. So to enrich the blood or something, especially when they are anemic. The doctors can better tell us. But that iron is called ferrous. Iron is, in chemistry, is coordinated to 4 nitrogen. And then in that hemoglobin, it has an amino acid called histidine. It's also connected to that ion. And then there's an empty side on the ion, an empty room that is left for oxygen. When the blood goes to the lung, oxygen will go bind to that site. So that then when the blood becomes oxygenated, that is enriching oxygen, it goes back to the heart and distribute that oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. So it continuously happens. But this particular heme, which contains iron, when carbon monoxide comes in the presence of oxygen, when you breathe in carbon monoxide, instead of this heme here binding to oxygen, it would prefer to bind to carbon monoxide, because carbon monoxide is very strong. It kicks oxygen aside. It like Mr. Snell was talking about, you know, it denies, if I got the word right, it prevents oxygen from going to the brain or other areas. So the reason oxygen is depleted in your body when you inhale carbon monoxide is carbon monoxide binds to that heme, the iron part of the hemoglobin. It coordinates to it, and then it goes in the rest of the body. The more carbon monoxide you inhale, the more oxygen is depleted from your body cells. Now, the major body organs that get first impacted, the brain. Like what Mr. Snell said, right? The brain needs oxygen to keep working. You become unconscious, you get a headache, you know, and then the heart also needs oxygen, and then follows by all other body organs. The more you inhale it, the more you become less effective, you become unconscious, and that is what leads to carbon monoxide poisoning.
Dr. Golafale.
Yeah.
Let me explain this to my grandma and whether she will understand it this way. So in our body, anytime we breathe in, we take in oxygen. We breathe out, we breathe out carbon monoxide. And then in the body, the heart itself almost like.
Let me just correct. When you breathe in air, air contains 21% oxygen. So
Yeah.
you're breathing in air.
Right.
So the oxygen component in our air that is important for your body.
Right. Okay. The air we breathe in, but the
Yeah.
oxygen is the main one.
Yeah.
So in our heart, the heart now is almost like the waterside market where the people
Yeah.
go and exchange. You give money, I give you goods. So we get there, you give me oxygen, I give you carbon dioxide. And then that's what's going on. But then you say also the hemoglobin is the one that is the taxi.
Before you go to that, the exchange actually occurs in the lungs.
In the lungs, yeah. The
heart is just a distribution channel.
Right, the lungs. So now the hemoglobin is the taxi driver.
Yes.
But then instead of oxygen getting in that taxi to go, carbon monoxide ride charo.
Exactly.
And it's not supposed to be there, but it competes. And because it competes and it's very quick to get there and stronger, it ride charo and oxygen is kept out. So instead of our heart now and all the body organs, including the brain, receiving the oxygen level continue to be low and low and low.
Yes.
So when it is no longer there and the brain is deprived of oxygen, the brain can no longer get oxygen, you become unconscious, you get dizzy,
yes,
everything depleted of oxygen, and then eventually you die.
Depending on the concentration you take in.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let me come in. Brilliant explanation by Dennis Jai to his grandma. Grandma, if you're listening, wherever you are, I hope your son Dennis was able to help you. But let me see if we can have my grandfather, who is somewhere, not on this app somewhere, to understand it further. And that will bring me to Joe. Joe, Golafale was right when you were explaining. I was getting emotional. And I was like, okay, then they said we shouldn't bring politics in this. But, you know, when people think about politics, it's about what? Leadership, right? It's about how we hold our leaders accountable, the role they're supposed to play that they're not playing, or that they are not effective at, and how can we remind them of those roles so that things that are preventable can be prevented. You have been impacted by this in a significant way, and those of us who listen to you could really feel, you know, the emotion that you felt at the time and continue to feel. Why are you hoping now down there? I know you expressed earlier that, look, education must be put out there, and that is why we are happy you joined us here, and we're providing this education not only from the scientific point, but also from the personal experience. What do you hope to see that policymakers, leaders in the country, community leaders, and just about everybody who may have to play a role, or what you hope all of us to do to prevent this? Because this is preventable, in my opinion.
Definitely. And this is why I'm here, to provide some recommendations that our people can work with, that the citizens can work with, that lawmakers can work with. So, for example, what is needed in Liberia regarding this carbon monoxide is education, which we are doing now. Another thing that can help is for the leaders to get to work and do their part. So, one of the functions or the responsibilities of government is to protect lives and property. So, here is valuable lives being consumed every day by carbon monoxide. We have agencies that are responsible, that are in charge of controlling something like this. For example, we have EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. It exists in Liberia. Does the EPA director know that people are dying out of carbon monoxide? Probably, I would say no, he doesn't. Or probably he knows and he doesn't care. I would say he doesn't care because he's not doing anything to prevent it. It's within his prerogatives as environmental protectionist to protect an agent that is destroying the environment for which that agency was created by law. So I'm putting this challenge to the EPA of Liberia to do something. Provide sensible guidelines that our people can work with. This is health hazard. Health hazard that what EPA was created to do, to protect. How come they are not doing it? We have the fire service. The machine is a house of fire. What do I mean? The gasoline that is in that runs the engine is flammable. So for somebody to take a flammable item and put it to the place where you sleep, it's not appropriate. So fire service, I would think that the fire service of Liberia by this time would have intervened. So no, anybody who uses a generator and deploys it in your bedroom or in your house, in your living room, in your kitchen, is unacceptable. Fire service have the responsibility to do this. Are they aware of the number of people that have been dying? Or they are playing deaf ears? Or they don't know? They don't know their responsibility. Or why they are not doing anything? The police are there. There are other agencies. Now, my last group that I will talk about is the legislators, the lawmakers. The lawmakers need to make sensible legislations that will inhibit anyone who uses a generator inside the house or inside your apartment. That is not encroaching upon the privacy of Liberian citizens. We have something we call noble goods of society. So the noble good of society is taking steps that will protect the interests of the society. So this is where government comes in. Because of the noble good of society, you have to do X, Y, and Z if you want to use a generator. That does not infringe upon any privacy right, in my opinion.
Thank you, Joe. And folks, we will take a short musical break. Not musical, sorry, a short break. And when we come back, we'll get back to Dr. Golafale. From the scientific point of view, Joe said some things. What are some preventable measures that we can all apply? That we can share with all those who use generators in their homes, and so that we can prevent this thing from killing our brothers and sisters. So that's short break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back with you, and thank you for staying with us here. This is Focus on Liberia. The program you are watching is Chemistry and Society. This is a special edition. We are talking about the chemistry of carbon monoxide poisoning, how it is impacting the community there in Liberia. Many people have died from this, and we're trying to see how we can elevate the conversation so that people can be in the know about what to do to avoid this. Dr. Saki, Golafale.
Yeah, thank you. And I listened to Mr. Snare and the question on how can we solve the issue of carbon monoxide poisoning. First of all, people in leadership need to take responsibility of ensuring public health and well-being. The environment is protected. There has to be laws to take people, or people have to give account of their actions. An example of what happens in communities is someone just burn anything anytime in a community, and you have clustered communities like West Point, Newtown, Sony Wen, just name it, all around, and people just burn without any regulations. And those are things that are, need to be regulated. People need to, or the government needs to be very strong on that. You cannot solve public health issue, with any kind of leniency. You want to satisfy people politically because someone doesn't want people to vote against them, so they don't want to make laws strong to protect lives and property. But we need the government and the relevant agencies to take a strong lead in this. In as much as we want the public to be educated, the people listen to the government, so the government needs to take a lead on that. Now, how can we prevent it? On a personal level, people have to take responsibility to prevent themselves from being, victims. It's important to read instructions like on generators. Strictly do not use the indoor. And I want to talk a particular, experience. Years back in the 90s, we used to sleep with jack-o'-lanterns on. When you wake up in the morning, or in your nose black, from the
residue.
The smoke, yes, the residue and all that. That's a form of slow poisoning. Many of us didn't know, and we need education. People need to be educated, and
Dr. Golafale, we used to laugh about that. You get up in the morning and your nose is clogged with black smoke.
Yeah, your nose is clogged with black smoke. You've been taking that in sleeping, and who knows? And one of the good things in our community is that we get more fresh air. Especially when you're sleeping. We don't close. I don't know for some people, but in some cases, people don't close their windows. They have air coming in, and that can be a savior but if you have a closed environment like that, you may not survive. And one thing I want to make, if people have that experience of when you come home from work, you experience, you only in your home, you experience headache, dizziness whenever you come home. But when you leave, you go out to work, your whole day, you okay. But every time you come home, it could not be only you. There are people in the house also experience that. That's a sign that, there may be some poison around, like carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's why I wanted to say also about the experience. What you experience home, it's common around in your household. You have to take note that there might be something that related to carbon monoxide. And of course, it's a silent killer. It won't tell you, it won't warn you. You won't see it, you won't smell it, and you just wake up and people die. I wouldn't dispute if people said, people die from carbon monoxide poisoning, but only if there's a strong evidence, scientific evidence, that shows that people die from carbon monoxide poisoning, which I want us to talk about later, and in relation to some of the claims that we recently, heard about people dying in cars and in homes of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah, and Dr. Golafale, before we go to our comments, and that's a very key thing that how are we determining that these people are dying from carbon monoxide poisoning? Is it being announced by any medical person, or how we know? But that's another story. And talking about personal responsibility, to what extent even our schools explain it, because I've done carbon monoxide in school, odorless, colorless, and that's it. But to what extent are we relating these things to what we are doing now, chemistry and society, to our everyday life? Everything is just left with memorization. So Brother Sinan lay out all those people responsible or who need to take responsibility to and needs to be accountable. But on top of that, our schools, educational system, we are not building this kind of thing into our school system. Our curriculum is just memorize it and you study and you pass. But how do we practicalize it? Even from the kindergarten level, it's almost non-existent. That is sad.
It is sad. But I think everything that has to do with safety and our public safety, most 9 out of 10 is not part of our culture. Yes, in the streets, in the homes, people do not consider public safety, as something very important. For example, I've been in a taxi driver running his car smoking. Everyone inside coughing, smoking. If you had that experience before, it's very dangerous. And the authority will see that kind of car running up the street. Passengers in the car getting this exhaust smoke. Now that's something to talk about. What can lead to that when the smoke is coming in the car? It's very dangerous, And the issue of the schools, we need to integrate public health, environmental issues into our curriculum. And not just put them into our curriculum, but make them practical. The issue of protecting the environment and human life and well-being is not just by theory. It should be by practice. Those of you who live in the US or other countries, you see what happened. When somebody is telling you the science, of the vaccine, how to give vaccine, you should know how to give it. Otherwise, you may give the person something, that have died before it goes in their body. So you are concerned about the life of the vaccine before it goes in the person's arm. So you get all that education. It's not just by theory and then you practicalize and then you forget. And then you destroy someone's life. The same thing. What we learn in our schools, we have to put them to practice. Environmental and public health education is highly needed in our Liberian curriculum.
And then before we go to our comment, Joe did a very good job, talking about the institutions responsible, stepping up to their responsibility so that these preventable incidents can, be preventable. But one thing I want to add to what he said and what Dr. Golafale just said is the issue of using the media to provide sensitization on the danger of, these kind of things. All right. Now, here we are focused on Liberia, breaking the science and the human side of this carbon monoxide poisoning and providing a direct education to people to listen. How many radio stations are providing such information? How many public officials are going to the radio station, even if they are not going there, are sending, ads to the radio stations, or if there are television stations selling those information paid for by their agency to sensitize and educate the public so that they will know exactly what they will do should they purchase a generator. Do we get that from these institutions charged with the responsibility of providing the necessary or education to the public so that they will be able to apply these safety measures to prevent these kind of things from happening? Maybe the budget is there, but it's going somewhere. And, but we have to get to our comments, to our callers. To those who are viewing us, please send your comments and tell us your suggestion. How can we prevent this from happening?
All right. First comment here from Musu Wanglo Stewart. And Musu, thank you. You've been following us since 1 o'clock today, watching these shows and participating. We appreciate that. Say, can generators emit carbon monoxide went on, or is it emitted when the generator is turned off? Eugenian Wejla Jar, I think I know her. Lanterns produce more carbon monoxide. Why is it that people don't die by using lanterns in their homes, including charcoal lanterns? Those two questions quickly, and then we move forward, Mr. Dr. Golafale.
Yeah, the first one, thank you, Musu. Now, generators do any internal combustion engine or gas internal combustion engine produces carbon monoxide when it is on. But what happens is that the carbon monoxide is produced because of the combustion. Is due to incomplete combustion. The reason is that the amount of oxygen supply in the, the piston, the air that's produced, supply there is not enough to burn all the gas. So instead of producing CO2, that is results of complete combustion, it produces CO. So to answer your question directly, only when the generator is on, because the combustion engine is running and it burns the carbon, the gas and the air mix, and it ignites, the product from it will be either an incomplete combustion or complete, but most time it's incomplete. And what happens is that generators should have the exhaust of the generator have a catalytic converter. Now you notice that some generators in communities can be loud. Some of the reason could be they take the exhaust is taken out. Sometimes the mechanics will come and say, "Oh, don't put the exhaust there." Yes, the reason sometimes the mechanics can come from the generator and take the exhaust out and allow it to be making that loud noise. The engine functions well when the exhaust is not there, because the exhaust prevents that pressure that goes to the engine. When the exhaust is there, it gives the engine more work to do. So the safety part of the exhaust is, if the exhaust has a catalytic converter, it will convert the carbon monoxide to carbon dioxide, so that it will reduce the amount of carbon monoxide coming out. But yes, again, only when the generator is on, it produces CO.
Then on lantern and charcoal lanterns in the room?
Yeah, that one, so the thing about it is, when you look at from my experience looking at charcoal lantern, they produce dark smoke. Dark smoke. Now, I'm not a fire expert, but I know a little bit about smoke. The color of smoke can inform you of what type of fire is it. If you have white smoke, it's like the fire just starting to burn, something like that. Or some, things that are not dry enough, starting to burn. If you have a dark smoke, that is an indication that the burning is really intense. Whether the burning is complete or not, I can conclude that the charcoal lantern produces excessive amount of carbon monoxide, but it does. Any kind of combustion produces carbon monoxide. The extent or the amount, I cannot tell. But indeed, it's a dangerous thing to sleep in a house when you have charcoal lantern on, you just lie down. As I said previously, we used to wake our nose inside black, and that was a dangerous practice.
Sebastian, we have said the new homes built in Liberia should carry carbon protection in them to prevent these kinds of accidental deaths in Liberia. Musu add to that and says smoke and carbon monoxide detectors should be mandatory in Liberia. Still on that, Siafa Morris said the government can mandate generator dealers to provide with the generator 2 carbon monoxide detectors to every buyer for each generator transaction. I think they are helping to provide some solutions there. Mr. C, more comments.
Talking about more comments.
Let me say another thing again about the generator. You see, if you use generator, you notice sometimes when the generator gets old and there are a lot of repairs going on, the generator start to leak the exhaust. It's not coming out through the main exhaust line. Or on the side, leaking. That smoke is leaking is more dangerous than the one that passes through the exhaust. So that's one thing for safety measures. People who use a generator, make sure your exhaust is tight enough, sealed, so that the smoke is not leaking out on the side. Because that smoke that is leaking out on the side it contains more content of carbon monoxide than the one that passes through the exhaust. Because once the exhaust has a catalytic converter in it, it will reduce the content of CO that comes out.
All right, let's read more comments. Yeah, this one it is from Siafa Morris. Was it established by the authorities that those 8 people died by carbon monoxide poisoning? Asking a question there from Eugenia somebody I know very well. What happened to the 8 family members in Liberia is beyond sad. The EPA could undertake a campaign to educate people about the proper use of items that produce CO2. Eugenia here say chemistry 101. That is exactly true. Kills the blood cells. I think that was when Joe was talking about how the carbon monoxide goes to block, people, the airflow in your brain. And then, yes, that's what that person is reacting to. Let's see this one. Carbon monoxide poisoning is the intake of excessive amount of CO2 that results into death and or unconsciousness, usually in a closed space. Eugenia is basically one way to solve this problem is by getting a smoke detector. That I agree. Musu again, we breathe out carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide.
Dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
Yeah, that's all right. Eugenia again, anytime a fossil fuel is burned, it releases carbon monoxide. Let's see this long one here. The best protection against CO2 poisoning is education. People must be made aware and educated about the danger of burning fossil fuel indoors. The use of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in homes must be encouraged, especially with the use of personal generators indoors.
Yeah, let me read this last comment so we can wind this down. Dennis Kake say, wow, such an educative show is only being listened to by 17 people as compared to other shows that discuss passives and Marcos. Yeah, Dennis will not deter. And still people are going to watch this show on YouTube later on, but we encourage you to share it and encourage your friends to join the show. So,
all right, time is fast spent. Let's come to you, Joe. Again, we can't thank you for coming. The human side, the personal stories that you brought to this chemistry and society edition here, Interspice with the Science itself, is so much refreshing. We just hope that folks will share this video so that many Liberians will listen to it and know what to do to prevent this thing from happening. Joe, so what can we do? We keep asking the question, what can we do?
So,
and that will be your final comments as we discuss the solution.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, there is something in America here. When you see something, say something. And I want to throw that out to the public in Liberia. If you see something, say something. So a Josner is having a party, and the generator that supplies the electricity is in the house, and you are next door to Joe, and you know it, that Joe is going to kill somebody as a result of the generator is keeping in our house. Contact the government of Liberia so something can be done immediately. If you see something, say something. Now, you were talking about we need to incorporate some of these things in education. I'm a teacher by profession. So I was calculating in my head how they can work this thing out. In the classroom setting, a teacher is somebody who is innovative. They can use or generator that is innovative generator, not a real one, a fake generator. You place it in the classroom, you make students to be like they are having a party, and in that incident, you make some pretend like they are dead as a result of the generator. It's a drama. It's a drama like thing I'm portraying.
A simulation.
Something like that can be done in the classroom setting. The students going to take that information out to their parents, and the parent will know what is going on with the generator. So the public, I'm calling on the media. My final comment would be, I'm calling on the media. I'm calling on the talk show hosts. I'm calling the newspaper writers. I'm calling on the people who sell generators that provide the education to the people who come for the generator. Let the talk show hosts do this thing that Asunis and others are doing. Costa, Prophet Key, all the radio stations that carry political topic every day, that call on politicians to come and talk. Let them call them to talk about the personal gas that are killing African people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Golafale.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so impressed that we managed to have this kind of conversation, and it has to continue. It has to continue not just here, but it has to continue in our communities, and keep educating people. It's important to know that carbon monoxide poisoning is not strange to Liberia. It doesn't happen only in Liberia. It happens everywhere around the world. But other countries have strong legislation and policies in place to save public health. Public health and safety measures are put in place, especially for new buildings. Nowadays, you have to have smoke detectors and CO detector combined. There are different types of detectors, but we have to make this part of our culture. It has to be something we have to build. The schools have to be a part of it, to educate, take on the spread in our communities. Our communities have to take leadership. It cannot only be the national leadership. It has to be everyone's involved, from the household to the community to the larger society, and the schools have to be involved with the education. It's not only carbon monoxide poisoning. There are a lot of public health issues out there that people play with in Liberia that are killing people. We play with them, And on the issue of, I wanted to address this issue of, when people die of, and there are claims that come that they die of carbon monoxide poisoning. There has to be evidence, scientific evidence. And let's be careful that in the long run, we don't make people cast doubt on science, because the reports that come out, and you still have people confused about those reports, especially with autopsy reports, and, say that someone died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And one thing I want to throw out there is, I haven't had an opportunity to read autopsy reports and reports of people dying from carbon monoxide. But one of the things I would like to see in reports about people reports that claim that people die of carbon monoxide is because carbon monoxide, when it bonds to the hemoglobin in the blood, the amount is more than the normal level that's in the blood. Now, it's important to also know that carbon monoxide is in our body. There's some level, that's in our body. For non-smokers, I can't remember what it is, but for smokers, it should be about 10%. Because once you smoke, you're taking in carbon monoxide because there's combustion going on in smoking. So smokers do. So when autopsies are done, or forensic investigations are done on bodies that, you know, people assume or presume to have, you know, people die from carbon monoxide, there has to be evidence, scientific evidence, like the blood chemistry. When you do the blood chemistry of someone who died of carbon monoxide poisoning, it's very simple. It's very simple. They have instruments that can determine whether or a person died of carbon monoxide poisoning will show what we call carboxy hemoglobin, because when carbon monoxide binds with the hemoglobin, it turns to what we call carboxy hemoglobin. It has a different color than the oxyhemoglobin. So when you do an analysis in our spectroscopy, you do spectrophotometry analysis where you use an instrument, a spectrometer, to determine what's in the blood. You can show that indeed the amount of carbon monoxide that that person has in the blood. That's an evidence. You know, you can do the blood chemistry. You know, you can even keep that blood for some 2-3 years, and you can still go and do it. It'll show you the same amount. So when someone died and they take them to the hospital and they say, oh, the report say, police report say it might be carbon monoxide poisoning, the hospitals and all those people, they can take blood samples. To establish a cause of death, you have to show scientific proof. You can't just guess. You know, so if I was someone who it was claimed that someone died of carbon monoxide poisoning, I would ask for evidence like that, scientific evidence. The blood chemistry. Does the blood chemistry show anything that there is a presence of carboxy hemoglobin? That is very important for issues of carbon monoxide poisoning. People shouldn't just make assumptions. We have to have living evidence. That's scientific evidence. I wanted to make that clear. But
thank you.
Comment, I feel that, yeah, on my last, just to make my last comment here, we have to continue this conversation, and we have to stay strong to challenge claims that come out that people die of this cause or that cause without any scientific proof. I wanted to also address the issue of the car, but we don't have time, and, you know, give some narrative about how, you know, when people give analysis of people dying from carbon monoxide in the car, you know, how it's like. And, you know, from a layman point of view, I'm not a forensic scientist or a pathologist or investigator, but I can tell you what you should look out for if someone says that, what the investigation should look out for. The issue of the car. Is the car old? Is it leaking somewhere? Gas coming from the exhaust? Those are things you want to consider if someone says this person died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Was it intentional? Did they put a pipe in the car and put the car on to allow? Those are all the things you look at when people claim that someone sat in the car and died for carbon monoxide poisoning. It shouldn't just be something based on assumption or trying to cover it up. It has to be evidence-based and science. So I want to thank people who watch this program. Chemistry and Society comes on every other week. We are on Facebook. You can follow us, Chemistry and Society, to be updated with our programs and other things that are educational about how we connect science, how science impacts your life on a daily basis. That's what we offer. We want for people to know the everyday science, you know, that happens from theory and practice, so that our people can be informed how to make decisions and how to safeguard themselves. I want to thank you, Anthony, Dennis Jah, for giving us this platform again. Mr. Snare, I was touched by your story. I'm very sorry for your loss, and let's keep fighting this. We can keep educating people and work together to make Liberia a great place. So you, Mr. Jah, Mr. Sonny, I turn it over.
On that note, we'll be concluding, but on top of the hour, our guest will be Elder Gilbert Monga Zawi. I don't need to tell you what the papier can do. Mr. Sunni, let's close.
This will bring us to the end of this edition of Chemistry and Society. We want to say a very big thank you to those of us who follow this broadcast. A special thanks to Mr. Joseph, who brought the personal story aspect of this broadcast. Joe, we thank you so much. I know what you have contributed here will go very, very far. Anybody who listening to the stories that you share and not move and not want to do something, that person is living on an entirely different planet. Saki Golafale, thank you. Dennis Jar, thank you. Like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. You want to go Liberia? It starts from here at Focus on Liberia. That's what we do. Bye-bye.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.